Welcome everybody. So here we are again. Had a little bit of a break. So today's topic is alienation, and yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of reasonably prepared for this one. It's hard to get going sometimes when I have a break, but yeah, no. Why this topic? Well, I think. I mean, it is a topic that my teacher Sangharakshita's talked about years ago as a problem that can come up in the spiritual life. Where we kind of we're looking to change. We're looking to develop ourselves and all that, and so we try and develop awareness. But what can happen if we're not careful is that we get very aware. And in a way, kind of bright kind of minds and everything, but that then sort of separates out a little bit from the rest of us. Like our emotions and our body, and our life. Things that maybe we kind of they're a bit more messy, or a bit more we're not quite comfortable with. So I think I kind of. One thing I've noticed among people who well, some people I've noticed on documentaries who are kind of involved in Silicon Valley, is that when they're speaking, they can be speaking, and then they're asked a question, and then it's almost as if they go blank or something. Like there's a kind of like a can't quite process it or something like that going on. And it reminds me of of data, and well, data is a more extreme example, I think. But Spock as well. Spock's a little bit more kind of slightly more human, really, a bit more intelligent, a bit more wisdom, I think. Anyway, yeah. So I think I want to sort of try and look at this a little bit, because it is something that it just does affect us, especially with like the the whole thing of us going online more, even more. With the pandemic, going on to everything's happening with Zoom, and kind of people are sort of giving up their Buddhist center rentals, kind of, well, for now anyway. So yeah, so it's like I thought it'd be good to look at this topic and try and make something of it. So let's start with some body work and then some meditation before moving on to that. Okay, so if you want to stand up. Okay. So what should we start with? Let's just put one foot in front of the other, and then just letting your arms swing backwards and forwards. So we're just loosening up our limbs. Finding some sort of rhythm. And feel the contact of your feet with the ground. Okay, now just put the other foot forward and do the same thing on the other side. So I think it's quite good if you can have a sense that your body has its own existence in its own world, its own domain, you know, the physical world, and that your mind, your thoughts have their own existence in their own world as well. Of thoughts, thinking, ideas, and that your emotions also have their own world. Of feeling and wants and desires. So one way of kind of getting away from feeling of alienation is to try and kind of fully experience all the different aspects of ourselves. Giving each of them some attention, some space, some freedom of their own. And this is one of the things that we can quite systematically and successfully do in meditation. You know, we're just giving ourselves the freedom and the space to experience ourselves, rather than maybe just a smaller part of ourselves. You know, if we're just obsessed with ideas or getting things done or something rather. Whatever we're giving most of our attention to. And just enjoying the kind of hinging of your arms at your shoulder, the stretch that happens each time your arm comes to the extent of the extremity of its swing. The main thing about body work, I think, is that we just observe what gives us, the effect we're looking for, really. And it can be something quite simple like this, really. And done for enough time, often. We often have to give things enough time, particularly when we're working with our body. Okay, then just come to a stop and slow circling of your hips. Listen to the sound of clothing. Mine's creaking a bit. Trying to keep mind and body in the same place, so it's not as if your body's ahead of your mind or your mind is ahead of your body. But, trying to keep the two together. So this is called mindful movement. Okay, just swinging backwards and forwards. And then do a twist and hold it. No, hold this at the other side. Hold it. Okay. Okay, and then take a seat for meditation. All right, so today we'll do the grounding meditation, which is about bringing awareness to our situation systematically. So if you want to just close your eyes. Just letting your body just sit there with the idea that it does know how to sit down, doesn't need any help from your mind to do that. And you just need to make sure that your spine is balanced, so that the weight of your body is going down through your spine into the ground. And you just have to notice if you're leaning over at all, either forwards or backwards or side to side, just Otherwise, you'll have to be, if you are leaning over, you'll have to be holding your spine up with some tension. So just look at the angle that it's making. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our situation right now. So what is that situation? Well, first of all, we exist in time and space. We're a human being existing in time and space. So first of all, just being aware of time, having a sense of all the moments you've experienced in the past. And then being aware of all the moments you will experience in the future. And then being aware that right now you exist in a particular moment in time, which is the present moment. It's also the case that we exist in space. That we're sitting on the Earth, which is a huge, great ball of matter flying through space. And above our head is the Earth's atmosphere, which is very thick, and then beyond the atmosphere is the vast empty space. But every now and then there might be an object like a star, a galaxy or something, but not very often. It's just really huge distances out there. And the Earth is covered with mountain ranges and ice caps and cities, deserts, oceans, and so on. And we're in a particular place on the Earth, so just arriving, just waiting for yourself to arrive in the place where you are. I think it slowly dawn on you that this is where you are. And it's also the case that you have a body, which is a physical object in the physical world. And your body has a particular structure to it. So it's got bones to support the body's weight and muscles to move the body about, organs to keep it alive. So just tuning into your particular body structure, trying to see where the bones are, where the muscles are, where the organs are. So just aligning yourself with the structure of your body so that you just you balance your spine so that the weight goes down directly into the ground. And if you are balanced, then your muscles can feel confident, they can just let go. And any unwanted tension can just fall away towards the ground. Being aware of your feelings at the moment, how you feel right now. Being aware of your thoughts. Owning your feelings and owning your thoughts. And however it is you're feeling, or whatever it is you're thinking, just having a sense of caring for yourself, wishing yourself well. Okay, so in your own time, bringing meditation to a close. So today's topic is alienation. Yeah, and I think I'm slightly hoping that I'll come up with some of the ideas as I go along. You know, I've got some stuff to talk about, and I kind of feel like it's not kind of all fully like worked out or something. Anyway, that's the situation. That's the real situation as it is. Yeah, yeah. So it is a topic that that's kind of been aware of for quite a while. Well, since I got involved in Buddhism, really, in 1988. So Sangharakshita, who's the founder of Tree Rattler Buddhism, he gave a series of lectures and on awareness, on mindfulness, and one of them was on what he called from alienated awareness to integrated awareness. And what happened was he became a monk in the late 1940s. You know, he was actually out in India in the war, and then at the end of the war, he just stayed in India. Really, he kind of deserted, and just because he was really interested in Buddhism, so he became a homeless wanderer for a couple of years with a friend. They wandered around various ashrams in India, and he wanted to become a Buddhist monk, but he was learning all about the different sort of spiritual systems in India, kind of Hinduism and staying at ashrams and that sort of thing. And he did become a monk in the end, and was in India for 20 years, and then he came back to the UK in the mid-60s, and he got involved with the Buddhism that was going on here, which had kind of evolved a little bit from the Buddhist society, and which were which was often like populated by people who were kind of quite academic, and they sorry, my brain's a bit like mush, really. I'll just say that. So they had invited. place called Hampstead Buddhist Vihara, and they'd invited a monk, Theravada monk, to teach there, and he was teaching something called the Burmese Satipatthana method, which was all about like just kind of rigorous sort of noting everything in your experience. So you'd sort of be walking up and down very slowly up and down the shrine room, and you'd be going lifting, moving, treading, sort of just marking every particular movement. So this is one thing that happens in Theravada Buddhism. People do this sort of practice, and it's kind of designed, I think, to just really kind of bring a lot of awareness to things, So the fact that you're naming everything that you're doing means that you're having to sort of like be aware of it. And but what he noticed was that, and it was mainly Westerners involved in this Hampstead Buddhist Vihara. What he noticed was that people got into a bit like zombie-like states. They were doing all this awareness practice, and he kind of wondered whether it was doing them any good or not. Because they just kind of like didn't seem very human. So this is a little bit like, that kind of data, and not so much Spock. I think Spock's more human, really, but data definitely. And data reminds me of like how some people in Silicon Valley look, when they just kind of, they're involved all the time in basically computers, virtual stuff, ideas, technology, it has a certain sort of effect. And I think, one of the things that Sangharakshita sort of talks about with the with alienation Well, he talks about a kind of, it's like a kind of refusal to actually experience. So, experience our thoughts, experience our feelings, experience our body. So there's a book I came across a while ago called War of the Worlds: The Assault on Reality by Mark Slaughter. When was it written? So it was written in 1995. So basically, kind of at the very beginning of things like virtual reality and the internet and all that. It's really interesting. He charts some of the kind of development of that. So he's talking about here about a lecturer at a major California university, somebody who's quite intelligent and witty, who's a bit of an expert on cyberspace, and he was sort of saying how how she kind of seemed to be quite interested in like Nietzsche and the Dadaists, and Nietzsche's sort of Nietzsche's dictum, the breaker as the creator. So this idea of like pulling things down, pulling down the establishment, and erecting something that's kind of more about freedom or something like that, maybe. All understood the validity of the attack on rationalism, the moral bankruptcy of Western liberalism. So it's like there's some sort of idea of I don't know, kind of like pulling things down. But what to replace it with? So Mark says that he when he was in this series of lectures, he just felt more and more kind of like disturbed, really, because he'd be trying to introduce the problem of ethics into discussion, and what she'd be doing was be talking about in the end about the future being this sort of world of like virtual technologies, and that would liberate us from the limitations of the human body. Within the span of our children's lifetimes, we were assured it would be possible to link the human nervous system directly to a computer to download the human consciousness into RAM, effectively preserving it into some artificial state. Within the foreseeable future, the dividing line between nature and technology, that a false dichotomy, we were told, since at least the invention of agriculture, would be erased. So basically it's kind of this dystopian view of the future, which was all kind of like dominated by technology. So what's going on here is like a kind of a denial of, a refusal to admit, in a way, that what being a human being is. So the idea that things, because a human being is impermanent, finite, not doesn't last forever, has feelings, has thoughts, things change all the time, has a body that goes through all sorts of states. So what another chapter is called Springtime for Schizophrenia, So what this kind of like moving into a virtual world, it kind of leads to this, sort of this feeling of alienation. So the word alien can be broken down to mean, in a way, it means like not possession, or not possessing. So the Latin ligare means to bind. So it's like an alien is somebody who, in a way, kind of doesn't belong in a particular place. So an alien on the earth would be somebody from off the earth. So when we're alienated from ourselves, our own emotions or thoughts and things, it's like we're not kind of taking up possession of them. So Sangharakshita talks about like 3 levels of awareness. So the first level is they involve 2 things. They involve awareness on the one hand and experience on the other. So he talks firstly about people kind of experiencing things but without awareness. So it's like you're just going through your life, you're doing stuff, but you've got no reflexive self-consciousness, which is like looking from outside of yourself to sort of see what's going on, like self-awareness. So it's like you just kind of get angry, you get irritated, you you mouth off at people and all that, but there's not a kind of sense of what you're doing really, what the effect of that is. So that's the first one, is experiencing but not having any awareness. And then secondly, he talks about having awareness but not experiencing. So it's like so this is alienated awareness, so it's like we're all like data, we're all very aware, or people in Silicon Valley are all kind of like got this bright sort of intelligence, but somehow there's some disconnect between that person's awareness and the fullness of their humanity, their kind of body, their feelings, their how they feel about things when they fall apart. So it's dead easy to keep ourselves in a world of escapism, where we're kind of we're just there in that world, and then it allows us to not experience ourselves and our actual feelings about things. So it might be that what's buried is a sort of a deep feeling of like isolation and loneliness, and then that is compensated for by getting involved in ideas and technology and excited by all of that, But from a Buddhist point of view, and this is a note for you, but the Buddhists in Silicon Valley, of whom there seems to be thousands, many people seem to be thinking of themselves as Buddhists in Silicon Valley, and I think in Apple there's maybe about 1,000 people, Apple headquarters or something, that I read that consider themselves as Buddhists. So yeah, it's like, I think to be a proper Buddhist, you've got to be quite broadly aware of your feelings, your fears, your desires, right sort of down kind of below the level of like just you, the way that you interact with people who think very similarly to you, in Silicon Valley, And it was interesting. I'm just watching a guy on YouTube. I can't remember his name. It's Peter somebody. Peter, with his second name begins with an S, and he basically does like little kind of YouTube 15-minute YouTube documentaries on different countries, and so he's done them on Saudi Arabia and Iran, and he's been into the most dangerous parts of New York, but he's been commenting on YouTube on San Francisco, and I watched one, and he was saying about how much people were just with COVID. It's almost like they completely paranoid, like not wanting to. You're wearing a mask and you're coming up to somebody, and it's obviously there's not a lot of danger there, but you're still kind of like doing this. So I think this is just a product of this sort of more kind of like alienation. It's like you're wanting to not quite experience life, your fears are out of proportion really to what's going on, but we only learn how to deal with our emotions by regularly being with our emotions, by experiencing our emotions. Yeah. So just to remind you of the way that I tend to think about the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness. So these are the four foundations of mindfulness: body, feeling, mind, and views. So in a way, body and feeling are just presented to us. They're experience presented to us. So body is like the tangible experience. We can touch stuff, we can touch, and also this world of the senses. And feeling is just an experience of pleasure or experience of pain. So that's experience, what's presented to us, and then the other two, mind and views, are response to experience. So it's like, this is what we actually have control over and can do something about. So we've got the active side of the mind, or chitta, which has three dimensions to it. It's got emotion, it's got attention, and it's got thought. So these are the kind of active ways in which our psyche, this is our whole psyche, responds to the world. We think about things, we emote about feelings, so if we have a pleasant experience, our emotion is often to want more of it. If we have a painful experience, our emotion is often to want less of it. So it's like this is our active side to life. And then views are like our map of the world, so kind of the way that we see things, which then often, because we have a choice over our views, this then often conditions what we then do. So if for instance, we think that if our view is that happiness will come from having more material possessions and sort of pleasant, exciting experiences, then this is what we'll actually go about trying to achieve. Our emotions will be in line with that, and our thoughts will be in line with that, and our attention will be in line with that. So we'll go about amassing wealth and having exciting experiences, and then that will either lead to happiness or it won't, and often what happens when people's belief systems don't lead to happiness, when they think they will, that belief system has to collapse in some sort of way and be replaced by something else. So often when people come along to a Buddhist center, somehow their belief system that they've been operating under has collapsed, and they're looking for something else. So Buddhism will say that the view of Buddhism is that things do collapse and fall apart, and you can't get happiness in the world of the senses and the world of material things. You have to kind of look inward to your own internal mental states and develop what are called skillful mental states that lead to happiness and for ourselves and others. So our views are, as I say, a map of the world, and they're quite important. So in the scripture, well, not scripture, in a book called the Dhammapada, which is it's a very kind of old part of the Buddhist canon. A really famous verse says that mind is a forerunner of all good and evil states. Mind is chief. Mind made are these states. So the actual word there is the Pali word is manas. So it's not chitta, it's manas, and so manas in a way is like the what creates our views. It's like it's our mind sense, which is what gives us our perspective. So I think this is often meant, what people think this means is it's mind in the sense of chitta, but I'm not sure it is. I think it might be mind in the sense of views. So it's like our views. It's our views that lead to good and evil, to happiness and suffering. So what is the alienated view? So what happens when somebody's alienated? So basically, I think what happens is their view is that somehow they're not taking possession of their own body, their own feelings, their own mental states, chitta. So it's like the view is that these thoughts, feelings, and body are not mine. So alien, not possession. They're not mine. So what does that lead? So these all condition each other. These four. So having this view conditions then, because they're not mine. It's like what happens is a sort of sense of just neutral feeling. So we're able to like avoid having to experience difficult feelings, and in a way we don't. We experience more neutrality of feeling than we do pleasure and pain, and in a way, maybe for somebody for whom life has been painful, then this is a sort of a choice they're making. It's like an option that they're taking. So like in a way, they're kind of getting rid of their feelings. In terms of body, I think what this view leads to is like, well, I think obviously a lot of people in work on computers are often go to the gym a lot, keep the physical bodies up, in terms of but it's like the body kind of becomes a bit of a vehicle for this sort of brain, so it keeps them going in this sort of in the virtual world, the world of ideas and stuff. But it's not like there's a sort of, it's like it's not on its own terms. It's like the body isn't kind of like really valued for what it is, and in a sense there's not a sense of care there. In a real sense, it's like the body is instrumental, in supporting something else. And then in terms of mind, mental states, so what you don't get is transformation. So because there's not a sense that this belongs to me, this is mine, I possess this, then there's no need to develop loving kindness, metta. There's no need to develop mindfulness. There's no need to think about things like the real world, so it's like it's sort of the consequence of alienation is like a kind of disengagement with, the actual world as it is, the real world. But the real world is going on in parallel to your alienated state, so at some point you've got to come back into it, at some point you've got to kind of, unless you can get into this virtual world that just lasts forever, and so it's basically what it is. I think I'm set to warm up again. What it is it's an abstraction, basically thought deals in abstractions. So it's like the idea of eternity, of permanence, they're all abstractions that are kind of, that aren't borne out in the real world, where things are impermanent and don't last forever. So it's quite interesting that in what happens often when people are depressed, and this is some theory from secular mindfulness, is that so it's like you have this kind of thought, or your view is that at a certain point, maybe like your view is like life has no meaning. So what that life has no meaning then leads to is depression. Basically, what it leads into is pain or mental pain. Chaitasic aveda is the technical term. So it's like, life has no meaning. That's painful. But, so we get depressed about it. So, and in a way, I think maybe depression becomes like an action we do here. We act on that pain, and we stop doing things. We stay in. We stop being kind of interested in other people, all that sort of thing. So in a way, depression does end up being some sort of action, but what do we do? What do people often do when they're depressed? What they often do is they ruminate. They try to think their way out of it. So depression itself becomes a problem. And often I think the depressed person then sort of feels bad about themselves because they're depressed, and they don't feel like a worthy member of society. So that then adds to the depression, and it's almost like they think about it more and more and more. It's almost like they dig themselves a bigger and bigger hole, rather than kind of coming out, finding a way of coming out of it. So that's A is a possibility. But another possibility is B here. Is to ask, well, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about life having no meaning? And the fact that it's painful. So asking yourself how you feel about it might then lead to some sadness about that, sadness about your life. But then that sadness might then lead to a sense of care. It's like you start to think, oh, I need to kind of, I'm sad. I feel sad about this thought, the fact that I think like this, so you start to actually have some sort of positive response towards it. So, what was he called? The guy, John Teasdale. John Teasdale is a sort of well-known figure a scientist in the secular mindfulness world, and he talks in a paper about this, about the antidote to rumination is to actually kind of experience. He talks about two modes of being, like a thinking mode and a emoting mode, and he says you have to get in touch with this, actually experience the feelings, and then from there you because in a way I think often depression is, the rumination is a way of avoiding the feelings. So I think this common theme going on here with alienation and depression and stuff is like this refusal to actually experience or own our experience, own our feelings, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so in Buddhism, this alienation can come about. So Sangharakshita talks about. He says, so we've got this tendency to be a bit alienated, and he says, well, when we start reading books about Buddhism and studying Buddhist philosophy, we come across the anatta doctrine, or non-self doctrine. So this is the idea that there's no fixed permanent self that's there behind our sort of phenomenal experience. There's just phenomenal experience. So, you know, people come across this Anatar doctrine, and it, you know, some smiling Oriental monk telling us that according to Buddhism, there's no self. Self is pure illusion. Well, this is actually a wrong view. This is not what Buddhism is saying. It's not saying self is illusion. It's saying that there's nothing fixed about ourselves, but we are a center of experience. You know, we are a center of agency as well. You know, so we need to take that seriously and look after ourselves, and, you know, look after others. You know, and take their being serious, their sort of, you know, experience seriously as well. You know, yeah. It says, if we could only see clearly and see properly, we would see that self is just not there. We haven't got a self. That's our big mistake. And this appeals to us very much. You know, we like the sound of it, because as a result of practicing mindfulness and increasing our alienated awareness, we've begun to feel unreal. You know, so it seems to us that we're getting somewhere. You know, because, you know, like we feel unreal, therefore we're making spiritual progress. So he says that, you know, these smiling, it's probably changed a lot. This is from the 60s. You know, monks are a lot more up to date with Western developments. You know, this smiling Oriental monk, not knowing anything about Western psychology, encourages us to go on thinking about this. You know, so we get more and more alienated, and some people end up in mental hospitals because they're pushing this so much. You know. So, you know, one of the teachings that's there in Buddhism, but that I kind of, you know, often, and I'll kind of admit it, that I don't know whether I'm right in this or not, you know, but for me, this particular teaching I find makes me feel like alienated. So it's called it's from Tibetan Buddhism, and it's called the shepherd's search for mind. So basically, the story is that this young shepherd boy goes up to Milarepa, who's the naked, you know, it's kind of semi-naked yogi living in a cave up in the snow, you know, in Tibet, enlightened guru yogi, and you know, he's just basically he's just a shepherd boy. He's just looking after the sheep and stuff, and so he asks Milarepa a question. He says, in the house of the body, is there just one mind, or are there several? And Milarepa says, just look at your experience. So he sends him off to look at his experience. And so he basically goes away and looks at his own mind and comes back, and then he says, I found that I have only one mind, even though, you know, I can't kill my own mind. I can't dismiss it. It won't go away. If I want to dismiss it, it won't go away. If I want to catch it, it can't be grasped. If I want it to remain, it won't stay. You know, if I try and see it, it can't be seen, and all that. Yet it is something illuminating, aware, wide awake, yet incomprehensible. So I think this sort of thing may be for you know, for people who are kind of quite not subject to alienation, who are quite grounded in their feelings and who take possession of themselves. You know, in a way, this might not be a problem to be kind of to have the mind looking at the mind. I mean, it goes on to say, does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it, this sort of thing? And I just find the whole notion just really alienating. Like, what's going on here? It's like it encourages a separation from my own mind to have these questions. So maybe the truth is that I'm sort of somebody who is a bit subject to alienation and does find it harder to take possession of my feelings and body and everything. And maybe that's why I experienced that. But I think when we are teaching Buddhism, then we need to bear in mind that for some people these sorts of questions will just be quite unhelpful. And well, I think, what Milarepa goes on to teach him, he gets him thinking about, basically gets him thinking. That's the shepherd boy thinking about his mind, about trying to be sort of a bit self-reflexive on his mind. But then what he does is he teaches them about Buddhism. He teaches them about the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. He teaches him how he kind of, he'll need to develop merit, which is ethics. He'll need to become courageous. He'll need to learn how to disregard discomfort and difficulties, So it basically teaches him the path of Buddhism, which is ethics, meditation, and wisdom. So he doesn't say to him, what you need to do is go on having these analytical, intellectual, explorations of your mind. He says, you need to start practicing over here, on chitta, develop positive emotion, reflect on your experience, build up your awareness, but to build serving, ethics, and then meditation, and then wisdom. So it's all about overcoming suffering for yourself and for others. So to do this, we've got to kind of keep coming back into our experience, and develop something called integration. So integration is the final of three. Final of Sangharakshis is three combinations of experience and awareness. So it's like he says, integrated awareness, which is what we're aiming at, is where we have awareness and we're experiencing ourselves at the same time. So in this book, The Journey and the Guide by Maitreya Bandhu, which we've been doing on the Tools class at Manchester Buddhist Centre, it says integration is not a thought, an idea, or a theory. It's a sense. The first characteristic of this sense is an increasing experience of wholeness, unification, and harmony. Psychologists call this flow. We experience flow when we're effortlessly absorbed in something positive, playing sport, giving a talk, painting a picture, communicating deeply with a friend. So it has certain key features. There's challenge there, and it requires skill. We're concentrated, we've got clear goals, we get immediate feedback. We have a deep sense of deep, effortless involvement. There's a sense of control. our sense of self seems to vanish and time seems to stop. So this is like a state of absorption that happens in meditation, or can happen in meditation, or when we're engaged in something like wholesome that's like taking all our attention, you know. So yeah, some like friendship, doing some art, those sorts of things. I mean, I think, you know, scientific creativity comes in here as well, but you know, we also need to be whole when we're doing that, you know, not be sort of just working on something, you know, to be a whole human being, well, yeah, which we have to be, because we have to come out of this partial world at some point, you know, and just be in what it is to be human, you know, because you know we have to face this at some point or other. Yeah, so I mean, you know, it's not to say that sort of a kind of slight alienated awareness doesn't have its uses in a way. It's like it does, you know, it does. You know, we can develop technologies and things. You know, we can boldly go where no one's gone before and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, that technology has to be put in a person's hand, you know, and they have to make decisions about, they have to make human decisions about how they use it, you know. So this in the end is always like, it always comes down to, you know, you've got Captain Kirk and you've got Spock, and so it always comes down to, in Star Trek, like it's Captain Kirk, isn't it, that's always like saying, actually, you know, we have to make these human decisions about what we do here. Yeah, and that's the actual situation we're in. You know, we're human beings, and we have to be human beings. Okie dokes. So that's it for today, and hope you found that interesting. And I think I got somewhere in the end. So yeah, good luck with your humanity today. And actually, I found it quite helpful to be studying something last night about the ideas of Martin Buber, and the Jewish psychologist, and he talks about two relationships: I, it, treating people as an it, treating yourself as an it, or I, thou, treating yourself as a thou. You know, so thou is like the personal pronoun of, like, you know, you as a human being. So, you know, maybe have that thought through the day, you know, thou, I'm a thou, and everything that implies.